In mid-June 2026, employees across one of South Korea's most prestigious media conglomerates, the 중앙그룹, discovered something quite alarming. Their corporate credit cards were suddenly being declined at payment terminals, and their internal spending accounts were completely frozen. To find out why, we have to look back just a few days to June 12th. That is when the flagship television network, Jtbc, missed a repayment on a routine securitized loan. The missed payment itself was relatively small, about $13.6 million US dollars. But this occurred within a massive conglomerate carrying roughly 2.8 trillion won in combined total debt. In a highly leveraged corporate structure, a single missed payment serves as a warning that the underlying cash flow has completely evaporated, leaving every subsidiary across the organization vulnerable. That single missed deadline tripped a legal wire known as an event of default, or EOD. In corporate finance, an EOD is a contract clause that allows lenders to demand their money back immediately if specific conditions, like missing a payment, are met. Once that EOD was triggered, credit rating agencies stepped in. They immediately downgraded JTBC's unsecured debt rating down to D, effectively labeling it as junk. With the rating slashed, the final legal barrier protecting the company evaporated. Creditors now had the right to call in their debts all at once, starting the clock on a rapid, conglomerate-wide collapse. Looking at this diagram of Jungang Group's financial structure, you see how debt links subsidiaries through shared guarantees. A downgrade in one triggers a cross-default, legally infecting the others. Creditors use this clause to aggressively call in loans. Hanyang Securities bypassed JTBC, demanding an immediate repayment of 22 billion won directly from the flagship newspaper, Jungang-ilbo. Lacking cash, the newspaper triggered a primary default, resulting in the immediate suspension of its bank accounts. Within 72 hours of the initial missed payment, the contagion had spread so far that 5 core affiliates simultaneously filed for court receivership. They desperately needed immediate judicial protection to block a complete run by creditors trying to seize their assets. These intertwined financial guarantees were originally put in place to pool risk and protect the conglomerate. Instead, they acted as a highly efficient transmission mechanism, ensuring the entire group collapsed together. The groundwork for this failure had been building for years. South Korean broadcasters are caught in a media death spiral. Viewers are abandoning linear television, flocking instead to digital streaming, driving broadcast advertising revenues down while high-end K-content costs soar. To break out of this slump, the Jungang Group made a massive gamble. They took on roughly $500 million in leveraged debt to secure exclusive broadcasting rights for the World Cup and Olympic Games through 2032. The plan to pay off that debt relied on a single strategy: sublicensing those highly expensive sports rights to South Korea's 3 major terrestrial networks. But the terrestrial networks balked at the inflated prices and refused to pay. Negotiations deadlocked, leaving the Jungang Group holding an astronomically expensive, highly illiquid asset exactly as national interest rates peaked. The company's collapse grew directly from a high-risk, debt-fueled expansion strategy that collided with a media market undergoing a permanent structural shift. When a manufacturing plant goes bankrupt, the physical machinery and inventory hold value, but a television broadcaster relies entirely on intangible assets: talent, intellectual property, and public trust. If the transmission stops, that value vanishes. This puts JTBC in severe regulatory danger. Under South Korean law, television networks undergo strict periodic reviews. If the network cannot prove it is financially solvent, the government has the power to revoke its broadcasting license completely. To survive, the group has been desperately attempting to liquidate physical real estate. They listed major properties, including their Sangam headquarters and massive Ilsan production studios, hoping to inject hundreds of billions of won into the company. The conglomerate has lost the ability to navigate its own way out of debt. Instead, it now relies entirely on strict, court-supervised restructuring just to keep its core operations running day to day. The forces tearing at the Jungang Group are actively squeezing the broader South Korean economy. The country is currently buckling under the pressure of the 3 highs: elevated interest rates, soaring consumer prices, and a surging dollar exchange rate. This pressure has stalled domestic growth. Major real estate and project financing developments have frozen, pushing the national construction sector to a 26-year low. For many, the severity of this widespread economic contraction is drawing direct comparisons to the deep financial trauma of the late 1990s Asian financial crisis. At the same time, the country is tracking a record-breaking surge in bankruptcies among small and medium-sized enterprises across the manufacturing and IT sectors. The sudden collapse of the Jungon Group signals a definitive closing chapter for South Korea's debt-fueled economic era.